Hi, this is Dr. Claire Steffen. Welcome back to Choice Studios. And today we're going to be talking about thinking, choosing, and predicting outcomes. Yesterday, I shared with you some information about my background, and I wanted to tell you just a little bit more about how I come to focus so much on choice. For 30 or more years, I've worked in many different environments. I've worked in hospitals, clinics, business settings, school environments. I've worked with children. I've worked with adolescents, couples, families, older adults. I've specialty focus on trauma work. I've worked with veterans. I've worked in Indian health. And so I've had the pleasure of working in many, many different environments. And one of the things I've learned is that no matter what environment I'm working in or what group of people or individual I may be working with, most of us want to feel a sense of empowerment. And we want to have that feeling of healthiness about us. And choice will allow us to be able to be healthier and to feel like we have a little bit more empowerment in life. So in looking at this segment, we're going to explore the different thinking styles that we rely upon when making choices and the various types of choices we're faced with in life. And the idea that we want to be able to have some level of prediction about the outcomes of these choices. Now, all of us want to have a sense of control over the outcomes. And so there are various risks involved in our choices that we make. And so by learning the simple learning system, cognitions of choice, we'll have a little higher level of predictability about those choices that we're making in life. So this very first level of thinking, if you recall, involves automatic thought process. And it's that type of habitual patterns that come up, and so automatically we don't even have time to stop and process them. And sometimes this can be a good thing if it involves routine or something that we want to understand, without having a lot of stress about responding. But there are those times in life or situations in which this automatic thought process can be problematic because it's creating a situation of habitual responding that might be unhealthy. And so when we're looking at this type of choice, it involves more deterministic thinking. In other words, very kind of structured, forced outcomes. And so this tool that we're going to be looking at here, this mnemonic, is used to address automatic thought process that is driven by habitual thinking. And so the mnemonic is simply that change happens as an opportunity to invite corrective experience. So what we're wanting to do in this case is focus on inviting choice. Because what will happen so often is that we just respond to a situation in an automatic way, and we don't take the time to insert choice or think about what our options might be. And as I've mentioned before, that all of us are involved in a process where whatever level of society we're born into, the opportunities that are available to us are structured around that socioeconomic placement. And so we want to not be stuck in that. We want to be able to be free of that restriction in life, and so that we have more open choices available to us. So when we apply this mnemonic, change happens as an opportunity to invite corrective experiences. It can allow the brain to be thinking about the process of thinking a little bit more. And so it doesn't force us into just that habitual responding. So this cognitive behavioral process of thinking very much, applies that thoughts connect to our feelings, connect to our behaviors, and then impact our beliefs. But frequently, people will experience a split or a gap between what they're thinking and their feeling. And this can result in conflict or a level of discomfort, perhaps anxiety or even depression, or some other unwanted experience. And so just to give you a clear example of this, when someone's going through a divorce, for example, they may know that it was the right choice, but they may be feeling something very different about that choice. And so they may experience discomfort. And so what we want to do is kind of close that gap a little bit so there's more consistency or congruency between what we think and what we feel. So this type of thinking and the choices that come out as a result of this deterministic thinking, it can be much more closed, I think that. And so it involves these simple yes, no kinds of choices, win-lose situations, right or wrong, tolerable, intolerable. And there's many different situations or experiences in life that involve this type of thinking, and it's not that it's a bad thing. We all have to be able to make these kinds of determined choices. We just don't want to be stuck in this as the only kind of thinking that we engage. So, for example, someone who might have a struggle with addiction, because it becomes such a habit, it becomes a way of life, and that determined kind of thinking takes and overrides the other type of thinking that might be available. So the person can start to feel a sense of low self-esteem or a lot of loss as a result of the choices that they're making. So we want to broaden the opportunity to apply other kinds of thinking. Another example of this might be someone who's in a situation of prejudice or feeling biased against. It can impact self-esteem or can have some other kind of damaging effect and can start to affect their own thinking about themselves in a very closed way. So we want to be able to move that thinking from just responding to that social construct or that implications of that to something much more open than just a determined outcome. So when we move people to a place of metacognition, where they're starting to be able to think about their thinkings a bit and think about their feelings, they can respond in a much more mindful way and have more choice available to them. So this process engaged more critical thinking, not that automatic thought process, and it allows them to process at a higher level of awareness, to be more mindful about their options or opportunities, and they have the ability to implement strategies. And so it's a much more efficient way of thinking because we have to learn some techniques to be able to resolve problems or to make choices based on previous experience that's housed in our memory, and we associate our learning. And so we can respond in a way that just reduces stress if we are thinking from this metacognitive place. And so it also allows us to move towards acceptance of ourselves and others, to be able to look at things that we can't change in a different way, and to be able to open our minds and our hearts, if you will, our feelings, and to new choices and opportunities. So in this case, the mnemonic is change happens as an opportunity to investigate critical thinking and experience. And so you may learn these mnemonics, and you might teach them to a client if you're a person who's a coach or a counselor working with a client. And it's not necessarily so important that they remember the mnemonic word for word. It's that they get that visual in their brain to be thinking about choice, to be able to insert choice in thoughts and feelings. And remember, I was saying that, in our previous segment, that it isn't always such a linear process that our thoughts affect our feelings. Yes, that is true. But it may be that there's a shift that's going on when we have thoughts, when we have feelings, and then we have feelings about those feelings, or we have thoughts about those feelings, and it starts to layer. And so we want to be able to move them from just that kind of linear reaction from thoughts to feelings to behavior. We want to be able to slow down the processing, slow down the brain, to also be able to insert choice as a way to open, our opportunities. And so when we're engaged in this metacognitive process, we're going to be in a much more mindful thinking status. There's more awareness, there's more openness to feeling, and we become more tolerant, of the discord. And so if we can stay in that gap a little bit in a more tolerable way, so that we just don't respond in a fearful way, then we'll be able to create more opportunity for very divergent thinking to occur, not just that single response, yes, no. So we can look at things in a more investigative way. We can be more open and aware and be able to explore what our opportunities and options truly are. So when we're looking at this critical thinking process that involves metacognition or mindfulness, typically what we're talking about here are situations that have undetermined outcomes, and so they're not so predictable. There's perhaps a higher degree of risk than there is with things that are involved in simple yes/no responses. Now, I was giving an example before of someone who might struggle with addiction or something that could be self-harming. Obviously, there is a high degree of risk in those kinds of situations, and it can really put a person in a situation that something that would otherwise have more of a predictable outcome will have less of a predictable outcome because of the choices that you're making. But in a healthy situation where people are responding in a much more balanced way, these choices, that are undetermined allow us to apply this divergent thinking. We have A, B, C, D choices, or we can really exercise more assertion. We can become more aware about our thinking about our thinking. We're more aware about our thoughts about our feelings or feelings about our feelings. And so you see there's many more layers and processes involved here. We can also become more meditative about how we want to respond, when we're going to make a choice. We can take the time to slow down and really get our balance and think in a more mindful way. We might also engage in negotiation, and so it gives us that opportunity to operate from a place that is more genuinely and authentically ourselves. It can allow us to build our self-esteem when we engage thinking at this level. And we become more aware of ourselves and more connected to ourselves, more available to others because of that. This also can involve some crucial situations that really could be more involving health situations or could also involve life or death situations. So you can see we really want to be able to help people to engage critical thinking and be able to allow themselves to access metacognition and mindfulness, so they have more of a sense of control over these outcomes that might otherwise be undetermined, or at least they have more sense of control about how to respond in these undetermined situations, so they can start to become more resilient. So when we get to the next level where we're really thinking in a more creative way, we're responding much more resiliently, we're starting to be able to provide opportunity for sustainable thinking to occur for our lives. And so we're involving this creating conscious choice. And it really allows us to choose and accept, things that are not within our control in a way that allows us to establish harmony and balance. So we're not responding in such a fear-based way. We're thinking much more from a place of abundance and resilience. So in this case, the mnemonic is conscious hope is an opportunity to initiate and create empowerment, because we all want to have that sense of empowerment in a healthy way. And so just as a reminder, when we're at level 1, we're starting to invite choice. And level 2, we're starting to investigate choice. And at level 3, we're starting to initiate choice. Or you might also say we're inviting change if that's what is appropriate. And we might be at level 2 investigating change, and at level 3 initiating change. So they're all very important skills because they come from a different set of processing in our brain. We want to be able to develop these skills so that we have many more choices available in all of these various kinds of situations in which our thinking is involved before we respond. So we want to make sustainable choices for life, and we want to be able to promote harmony in our lives and create balance and experience spontaneous joy and move to a place of acceptance. And acceptance can have many different phases. Sometimes situations happen in life that are very difficult to accept. And so we can feel a sense of powerlessness about that. And so having a broader base in which to respond and more choices available to us in a way that allow us to have a higher degree of predictability and connection to ourselves is very important. Also looking at forgiveness. Forgiveness can occur in many different ways and also many different levels. There's the simple, I forgive you, yes, I'm sorry, that type of thing. But then there's a deeper level of forgiveness in some situations where there's been perhaps more traumatic event or something more harmful. It isn't always necessary to forgive the person who harmed you as much as it is to be able to come to a place of acceptance for what happened to you and the harm that happened, and how that has resulted or implicated, the outcomes in a way that limits your choices. And so you want to be able to make some movement in that arena and be able to improve that. So also bringing people to a place of self-love and being able to experience love in a reciprocal way. So when we bring people to a place of this kind of sustainability, they make much more conscious choices, they feel and think more holistically, and they're able to transcend situations that might be traumatic or might be, kind of controlling their outcomes, if it's restricted from that point of view of what's socially is happening or the social constructivist view. So we've moved from just that place of being in a very closed way of responding to openly responding and transcending. And so we're not just taking what is constructed and saying this is all I get in life and just responding in a very closed way or responding in a much more open way. So as we move forward here, I wanted to kind of remind you of some of the different kinds of thinking and styles of choice making that are involved in sustainable outcome. When we engage this kind of thinking and these types of choices, we are able to support harmony in our lives. And we're able to experience much more balance between mind, body, and thinking, and feeling. And some of this kind of thinking and choices might involve moral dilemmas. It might engage spiritual choices, and in some cases it might be religious, it might not. It may be just more your connection to yourself in the world. So we can have a much healthier view of ourselves within the world, and we can start to construct and create a type of identity that allows us to build choices in a more creative way. We can have choices that really support this philosophy for living and have many more opportunities to experience life in a fuller way. We can experience much more empathy within ourselves and in our relationships, and we can become much more resilient. So I want to thank you for joining me again here at Choice Studio, and going forward, we'll have some sessions in which I'll be able to teach you some very specific ways to apply cognitions of choice and to focus in on some of the traits or dispositions that we're going to want to develop to be able to create a wide range of abilities to apply choice in the different situations and experiences that we've been talking about here today. Now, obviously, there's probably many more that I haven't even mentioned that you can think of yourself. And that's the thing when we work didactically or in a teaching method, sometimes, it is a bit linear. And as I said, really life doesn't happen in that way. Things happen in a much more dimensional and radial way. But for teaching purposes, this gives us a place to start and to develop choice. So thank you again for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in my next session here at Choice Studio.